Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this evening for this very important webinar, Protect Against Government Scammers, sponsored by AARP. My name is Elizabeth Aloni. I'm with Schneps Media. Schneps Media is the largest local media company in the New York metro area. We publish over 80 newspapers, magazines, websites, webinars, podcasts, and events throughout Queens, Brooklyn, Manhattan, the Bronx, Staten Island, Westchester, Long Island, the East End, Philadelphia, and now Palm Beach, Florida as well. And we are so thrilled to be able to bring you this incredibly important webinar tonight. You know, AARP is working to empower you in the fight against fraud with proven resources and tools that are going to help you spot and avoid government imposters and online relationship scams. Government imposters will go to great lengths to convince you that they are from the federal or local government with the intent of stealing your money or your identity. And today we have experts to share about these scams and how to avoid them. So let me introduce our panelists. First of all, I am incredibly proud to introduce Vilda Vera Mayuga. She is the Commissioner of the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. Ms. Mayuga was appointed by Mayor Adams to the role in February 2022. Commissioner Mayuga is a seasoned public servant across all levels of government. Prior to DCWP, she served as Deputy Secretary for Economic Opportunity at the New York State Department of State. In that capacity, she oversaw the Office for New Americans, the Division of Consumer Protection, the Division of Community Services, and the Address Confidentiality Program. Mayuga was also the Secretary of State's designee to the Committee on an Open Government. From 2014 until June 2018, she served as chair of the New York State Industrial Board of Appeals. She was the first Latina to hold the position. Previously, Mayuga was Deputy Commissioner for Worker Protection at the New York State Department of Labor, overseeing the divisions of labor standards, safety and health, and immigration policies and affairs. She started the Department of Labor in February 2011 as Executive Director of the Division of Immigrant Policies and Affairs, where she implemented the agency's first U-Visa certification protocol and expanded the agency's role and presence in the fight against human trafficking. Under her direction, the Agricultural Labor Program was started to provide services to both agricultural employers and workers. Mayuga also played a critical role in ensuring the agency's compliance with language access requirements and worked heavily on the drafting of the statewide policy resulting in Executive Order 26. Mayuga also served as an Assistant Attorney General in the Civil Rights Bureau of the Office of the New York Attorney General. There, she managed a diverse caseload of civil rights cases and handled every stage of litigation. Mayuga tried and settled numerous immigration services fraud cases that resulted in multi-million-dollar judgments. As a result, she received the 2009 Special Award for Achievement in the Immigration Fraud Initiative. Before that, Mayuga served as an agency attorney and investigated equal employment opportunity complaints within the Fire Department of New York. She also conducted on-site inspections of FDNY premises, such as firehouses and EMS stations, to ensure compliance with the FDNY EEO policy. Mayuga who also worked in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, where she analyzed, processed, and monitored requests for evidence from foreign countries. Wow. Welcome, Commissioner Mayuga. So happy to have you here.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Incredible. Now, please, I'm thrilled to welcome William Guzman, Associate State Director of Community Engagement, AARP New York. Wilson has been the AARP Associate State Director of Community Engagement for New York City in New York State since August 2021. Wilson works with members, volunteers, and staff on issues important to the 50+ population and AARP's 2.6 million New York members and their families. Wilson is focusing on improving the lives of the 50+, their families, and their communities by creating programs that are directed to AARP New York members, volunteers, and guests. Before joining AARP, Wilson worked for a Spanish language television network as the Community Affairs Manager. Welcome, Wilson. It is so wonderful
Thank you so much for having me, and it's a pleasure to be in such great company. Wow, I had no idea. Even though I did read the bio, but it didn't sink in until I heard you mention Commissioner Mayuga's amazing career path.
Absolutely, truly an honor to have her here with us today. So Commissioner Mayuga, let's jump right in. Can you give us an overview on how fraudsters impersonate the government and how to spot them?
Thank you. Absolutely. I think it's important things to know that government impersonator scams really usually start with a call, an email, a text message, someone who's claiming to be with a government agency. And sometimes they know how those calls may go because you call a government agency and you kind of have a sense. So they'll give you an employee ID number because they believe that will make them sound official. And they might have some information about you, your name, your home address. So brings you to a certain comfort level so that you believe they are calling legitimately from a government agency that you should trust. And although I think also to keep in mind that although we see common frauds impersonating government agencies like with Social Security, Administration, Medicare, other agencies like that, it's also important to know that sometimes we see scams involving fake agency names like the non-existent National Sweepstakes Bureau. And the use of the word national or bureau or office, I think it gives us a sense that it's something related to government and it has some legitimacy to it. So we want to be careful about those calls or texts or emails that we may get. So any call, email, text message from someone claiming to be a government official and demanding money or personal information is likely a scam. So we want people to be, get their spidey senses, as they call them, to become really alert and activate a part of our brain to be on alert on what that call may be about. So really resist that pressure to act quickly, pause, do not feel rushed, and you are not sure about that call or that outreach you're receiving from a supposed to be government agency. We just encourage people to hang up or don't respond to the email or text and call the official number as you know it from finding it in a pamphlet, perhaps that you have at home, perhaps that you have at home from the official agency or visiting their website if you have access.
That's really important to know that you really are empowering people to trust themselves and to ask questions. And just because someone uses a very official term does not make them official. Thank you for that. So what are some of the common government imposter scams you see? I'm actually going to share a slide here as you share with us this information.
That's great. Thank you so much. Yes. So as people can see on this screen, IRS scams are very popular. I think we're all very sensitive to the IRS, in terms of nobody wants to owe the IRS anything. We know the IRS can be aggressive in their collection practices. And so I think it has that sense of urgency when a scammer pretends to be calling from the Internal Revenue Service. They're either going to claim what we're talking about you owing money or you're entitled to a large refund. And I think especially as we continue to be in this pandemic and perhaps a little better than the last 2 years, there's a lot of people that are in a very precarious financial situation. So the sound of I'm actually entitled to a large refund is very attractive for any individual. So we want to make sure that we're very careful about that. The IRS absolutely will not initiate contact with taxpayers by email or by text messages or social media. It's like a mail, postal mail type of agency, really. Although they obviously will tend to the customer or consumers by phone if you call one of the numbers that they put in their letters. So that's what you can do if you have questions to reach out to the IRS, but they do not reach out otherwise. And in general, legitimate government agencies, they're just not going to all of a sudden call you. It is, if that were to happen, it really will be after several attempts of doing outreach to you as an individual by mail. And absolutely, there's no payment by gift cards. That is a scam that we do see frequently, unfortunately. And somehow, we fall for it. And it's something to keep in mind. There is no such thing as paying for anything related to government with a gift card. So that's something that we want to keep in mind. IRS is going to want just your bank account information, or they might allow you to pay with credit card that has, certain fees involved in there, but it's all clearly detailed in the letters and the correspondence that they would send. So again, don't rush. We all want to get either too excited or too nervous. if it's that we've been told that we owe money. So if you think, particularly with the IRS, that you received the call imposter, you should report it to them. And we have the numbers there, the 800-829-1040. You can also file a complaint with the FTC. That's the federal agency that handles reports of and investigations related to fraud when it comes to federal agencies.
Thank you. And I'm going to share that number in the chat with everybody. And I'm also, everyone's going to get an email tomorrow, a thank you email, and I will include that number in that email there as well. That's very important and good to have handy.
We have another, I think the next slide will show another typical government scam, or, pretending to be government scam, and that's related to public benefits. Mm-hmm. Again, I think especially the 50+ population, if you're receiving Social Security, or perhaps, unemployment, supposedly a call to verify personal information, saying that it's necessary to process your claim. Again, do not give information to people you do not know and you've not been able to verify their identity. If government will really call you, nobody's going to get upset that you saying, I'm going to hang up, or if you just hang up, and I'm just going to call the number that I know it to be from that agency. That's absolutely fine. It really is something that you should do. Even if the person really ended up being government, it's worth it for you to just not take that risk and give personal information to someone that you have no idea to verify whether they are legitimately who they claim to be. Similarly, Social Security, as you hopefully know, that is our identifier in this country, right? In the United States, that is what identifies us separate as individuals from anybody else. There's only one for each of us. And so we want to be real careful where that information lands. Not related to scams, but let's not get in the habit also of like writing it down on a piece of paper that we then leave laying around. But yes, do not give any part of your Social Security number. Sometimes we think that a few digits, it's okay. It is not, especially if you don't know who you're providing that information to.
That's a really good point, because, I notice very often that they just ask for the last 4 of your social. So I feel like that's become a very common question asked. How careful should we be in sharing that? Even with, let's say, reputable companies. I mean, that feels nerve-wracking.
One important thing to keep in mind is that you can ask questions. Nobody should feel pressured to give information if they don't understand why they need to give it. Sometimes if you've called, I have my student loans, and sometimes I might call and I was like, I don't remember my account number. And they're like, well, give me your Social Security number. And I was like, well, maybe account number. But there's different ways that sometimes you can verify information. I mean, obviously, if you know that you call in the right phone number because you've obtained it from the right source, whether it's again an official document that you have from the government agency in this case, right, the topic that we're talking about, or the official website. Now, that's going to be a different conversation in terms of what you're sharing and why you're sharing it. But if you're really uncomfortable, you should also just ask the question, why do I have to give it to you? Is there another way? And that's, again, perfectly fine to ask.
Good advice. Thank you. So, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to give one more example that we don't have on the slides, but sometimes one that gets really scary is receiving a phone call from a law enforcement officer or NYPD representative telling you that there's a family member that has been arrested and that you need to pay bail money with a gift card. That's another scam that we do see often, and that's really, really scary. And so, we should all keep it in mind. Sometimes I think scammers try to guess based on information that may be out there, whether you even have relatives that could be subject to that. But when they get it right, that you do happen to have a nephew, a niece, your son, your daughter, your goddaughter, your grandchild, it can be really scary to get that call. But again, hopefully you hear this enough times through this presentation, through outreach that AARP also does in different ways. And it triggers in your brain, no, I heard that this could be a problem. I'm not going to respond to that. So that's an important one that I want to make sure that we also talk about today.
Thank you. Thank you. That is very important because that is frightening to get a call that someone that you love is in a lot of trouble. But would somebody just call and ask you to pay bail on the phone if that was the case?
They'll ask you to send them a gift card, and they'll they sometimes give you like a time limit and when the person, when that has to be received. So unfortunately, it does happen that people will rush out, or they might direct you to a website where you can purchase a gift card online and transfer it over to an individual. So it's amazing how quickly and how elaborate these scams can be in a way that you really believe it is a legitimate phone call or text message or email that you're receiving.
Thank you for that. So what tips do you have to help people avoid becoming a victim of identity theft?
We have some on the screen, and one of the most, sadly, right, that is identity theft is one of the most common and serious types of fraud that are perpetrated against older adults. Each year, as many as 9 million Americans' identities are stolen. And I think it's, before we get to tips, I want to share something also in terms of why older adults. And it's sort of similar to young individuals like minors, for example. And I don't know the reason really why, but those two categories tend to have beautiful credit scores. And somehow in the middle part, it's like we're like struggling with our credit. But after a certain age, sometimes people have reached a certain financial stability that allows you to create beautiful credit, that it becomes very attractive for your identity to be stolen, for example. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And then children is sort of similar because obviously it's a very clean, nothing in their history, in their credit history. But some of the tips, to keep in mind are certainly, protecting your personal information. Do not give the personal information over the phone or email or text, like we were talking about when we're mentioning some examples of government imposters. Very, very careful in social media sites. We tend to complete all of the questions in a profile for setting up an account. What's your date of birth? What school did you go to? What's the name of your pet? And sometimes those are security questions that get asked, like, what school did you go to? What's your maiden name? And unfortunately, when you share all of that information also in social media profiles, now you're giving a beautiful piece of information, profile of yourself, to scammers who are now going to steal your identity, and they might log on to an account and they actually know what's the answer to all of the security questions because you told them the name of your beautiful dog, and you told them, all that other information. What's the first car that you had? And you put in a picture of like that beautiful car that you got out of whenever. So those are things to keep in mind. Many, many times it just happens way too often, unfortunately, but just emails with certain links to access either participating in a survey or a free gift of some sort, or a trip or whatever it is. So do not click on any unfamiliar links, especially on emails. Just again, if it's information that you're seeking, you can certainly go to official websites to obtain that information. Look at your mail, that comes physical mail. Make sure that you are reviewing that. And if you see anything suspicious, that you report it, or you can look into it. If it's some notification that you supposedly, apply for some credit card, it's important to find out where is that coming from. And if you're going away, you can put a hold on your mail through the post office. The US Postal Service they do those hold mails, and you can do it through their website. Or you can go directly to the post office and fill out the form and give them the dates, the period of the time that you're going to be gone. And they'll either deliver the bulk mail later when you tell them, or you can pick it up, when you return from your vacation. But that way, there's nobody who may be potentially looking at your mail while you're away and taking information that is in those documents. When you are shopping, keep an eye on your credit card. Any charges that are coming, make sure that those are the ones reflected and not something else. Another tip that related to shopping, that we don't have it on the slide, but it's good to keep in mind, especially, I don't know, holiday season, you are shopping for presents. Sometimes it makes sense to, if you have more than one credit card, it's good practice to choose one credit card to make all those purchases, because now if you all of a sudden see something purchased on another credit card, you're like, wait a second, this is my credit card, that my go-to credit card for these purchases during this time, and it might raise an alert, right? Because sometimes there's so many things that you buy and you just forget, and you're like, oh, it could have been these. Oh yeah, I went there. So that's another tip that people can keep in mind if they're doing something in particular, or maybe they're just planning some event, some celebration or something. Try to stick to one credit card so you can. That could be another thing that everything will be coming through one place and not others. Reduce paper, shred away. Don't just throw papers that have personal information in the garbage or to recycle. Really shred it. It is, or cut it into pieces. Or sometimes what I do also, even if it's like a credit card, perhaps we're getting rid of, they say cut it. What I do sometimes, like I cut it into several pieces, but then I throw it in different garbage cans. So if somebody's
smart, that's smart.
So like that's another thing that it may sound a little silly, but I like doing
we
that.
Actually, Commissioner, we have something great happening. Schnepp's Media has some events, shredding events, free shredding events. That's sponsored by AARP, and I'm actually going to put the website in the chat, but it's through the Schnepp's Media website. You click on events and you'll see those shred events there. And we have events in all the boroughs on Long Island. You can go there. It's 100% free, and you could do exactly what the commissioner is saying. Go and shred your documents so that you don't have to worry about them being found in 12 garbages and tape. But no, it's really, we'd love for you to take advantage of these free shredding events all over the city, all over Long Island, so that you can make sure that you keep your paper safe.
Yes. And yes, that does include pre-approved credit card forms, because usually those credit card forms have some sort of code that if you go to the website, you put it in and it sort of pre-populates some information. So you don't want somebody to be opening up an account on your behalf because there was some information in that offer that you received because you ended up in some marketing list that was sold to someone. And that's something to keep in mind, and don't just discard as you're like, oh, more junk mail. It's like, okay, just open it and like shred the pieces. That might expose you.
Advice.
No, for sure. And then keep your computer, tablet, smartphones up to date. Sometimes we get those notifications. There's a new upgrade, in terms of software. Those do happen for a reason. It's not, sometimes it is like, oh, a bug here, a bug there, but a lot of times it does, it is increasing the security in your devices and the information that is secure there. So always, when you get those, stay on top of those to update them.
Commissioner, I didn't know that at all. I just thought it might give me like a new emoji or something. I never cared. But now that you're saying that, that's a good point. Okay.
Oh, they might do that too, but believe it or not, it really does update the security and firewall softwares in the devices.
Good to know.
And then don't wait. If you think you're a victim of identity theft, just close the accounts that you think are subject to that, report it to the police. Is a really painful process if you do become a victim of identity theft. It can really, really cause a lot of problems in just your day-to-day life. So please don't hesitate. If it's nothing, then it's nothing. But if you're unsure, why not just make sure that it's looked into.
Fantastic. I also have a phone number here for that as well. We have here the identitytheft.gov, and we also have a number here, 877-438-4338. And I will share that also in the email that goes out tomorrow and in the chat too. So, don't be shy. Make sure that you are reporting this so that you can be protected and we can protect people in the future as well. So what about any other important resources or website links that people should be aware of?
Yes, well, we do go through great lengths to create, documents and information and pamphlets that we feel are great to have in hand, or people can go back to as reference documents to remind themselves or share information with anybody in their network. And so we encourage people to go to our website, nyc.gov/TCWP, but people can also call, 311. Some people prefer paper. They don't want to like go back. They're like, oh, gotta go back to my phone or the iPad or whatever to go on our website. You can also just call 311 and we'll mail you the actual pamphlet on tips related to scams or preventing identity theft and all of those things. So please reach out with those. And just a quick plug for financial counseling. We do have these amazing financial counseling centers. They are there to provide some guidance and information to all New Yorkers on what is available to them and ways that they can improve their finances. If you have like credit cards or loans, and in terms of you just want to like budget, you're trying to reach a goal, we have amazing financial counselors in all the 5 boroughs in New York City to help us get people. So again, you can call 311 and make an appointment.
It's so easy to get information and to protect yourself. So make sure that you are using all of these resources. And what's easier than dialing 311? So let me, we have some really good questions that I'd like to get to. And I'm just going to jump over here. Jack wants to know, what can I do about these Robo Calls? Because they tend to call a lot and they can be confusing. Yeah. Is there anything one can do to protect themselves from it?
Yes, you could, sign up for the Do Not Call Registry. That's one step that people should take. I will admit that it can be frustrating to do that and still get calls. So I don't want to pretend that just register, just putting your phone number there is not going to prevent the calls from coming. As you get calls, despite being on the national, Do Not Call Registry, you can block calls. If you start getting calls that are from a phone number that is robocalls and you're not interested in speaking with them, you can block the number so that it just doesn't ring. It doesn't, you don't, receive the call. Yeah, I I think those are 2 tips I can give concretely, at least.
No, those are some really good tips. Because I think, part of it too is setting yourself up to protect yourself from it. One thing is knowing what to do when they come at you. And then another is, how can I protect myself from being inundated with this kind of aggression? What is one of the most common scams that you're seeing in New York? Are there some that are more common than others?
I think government scams? Yeah, I think the IRS one is a very typical one. It's just, I think, again, right now we're in tax season. So sometimes it's sort of like a seasonal thing on what you see. In the midst of the pandemic, you would see a lot related to COVID, right? Whether it was tests or whether it was, my goodness, the shots, the vaccine.
Right.
So it's sort of seasonal, I would say, depending on what these scammers know it's happening. Pay attention, when you're watching the news, reading, hopefully reputable sources of information. Anytime there is something, there's a new law or some sort of initiative that government is engaging in or launching, the details may not be out there yet, and scammers already have their process in place to be like, I got you. And because you heard about it in the news, you're believing that it's true. And although the program exists, it hasn't been like really rolled out, and government might have made an announcement about it, but not really given the details on how to access a particular benefit or what the initiative may offer. And so that's another thing that happens a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Joyce had a question about Publishers Clearinghouse. She got a message that said she was a winner, and she tried to look it up to get a phone number to see if she could speak to someone if she really won. Should she call the number? She wants to know, should I call the phone number from the message that they left me?
I mean, I think you should just arm yourself, right, with the information that we're sharing here and be skeptical. I think you want to make sure that the questions that they're asking you and why they're asking for certain information you're comfortable giving. That's really the way you're going to protect yourself. You shouldn't, if there's something too good to be true, it is too good to be true. Sadly, there's just no, that's just always true, because there's just nothing that's ever going to be really true if it's too good when it comes to money.
No, it's good advice. You know, people get very excited, and that's where they get you. And it's important to be skeptical. I think you made a really great point, Commissioner, when you're talking about ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to do that. But chances are, if they're leaving a phone number, it's kind of concerning to call that number for more information. So be skeptical. It's good advice. Sad to say, but it's smart. It's smart advice. Carolyn said that on the New York City Affordable Housing Connect lottery, it asks for our social security number, even on paper. Is it okay to give our social security number?
I'm familiar with the affordable, with that application. I don't remember the details. I don't want to speak for another agency. So I'm happy to find out why they may be asking for that. So I mean, it is a government agency. I just don't know exactly where the website says. So I would just want to make sure that it is the right website. That is definitely a government program. I guess you just want to make sure that you're going to the right, government website.
And like you said, ask questions. Again, that's a really smart thing. If it's a really government agency, they're not going to mind your asking of questions. So that's really good advice. So another person I owned said about, I get a lot of scam calls. How do I present this? So it's the do not call. Is the do not call an annual thing that one would have to re-register with? Or is it the kind of thing where you can put yourself on a do not call list and just not worry about it?
There's just, there's a lot of way to go technology that scammers know to use. And what happens is that, and this is just like a really large issue that honestly, I think goes beyond what we're talking about today, but I can just tell you what I know in terms of addressing the issue with scams and robocalls, and which may come down to the phone companies, right? That the telecommunication companies that create the phone numbers that are used by others, right? Because the phone number comes from somewhere, and the mechanics of who access certain phone numbers to reach whoever they're going to reach, it's complicated, and sometimes it's difficult to identify who is the originator. And I know that government at all levels will try to address it, but by the time, it's not the fastest process. And so in terms of, I don't know that you can prevent them. I will be honest with you. I think you can do a number of things. I think, again, you will register in the Not Call Registry. That is where states will get their data from to do their investigations and their enforcement. And you can block numbers, like we said before. You can, you can just ignore them, obviously, as annoying as it may be to keep getting those calls. Those are, it's very frustrating. There's just not, it's not an area that I think we have been, we government in general have been successful in eliminating, and it's going to take, a bit more sophisticated probably structure in place to identify how it gets to, how does that number get to ring on our phones so that we can prevent that from happening.
In the meantime, we have to arm ourselves with information. Like you said, I think it was very helpful to know, the IRS is not going to just call you out of nowhere. And that happened to me, actually. The IRS called me and threatened that I was going to go to jail. And it was very scary. because they sound very official and you think it is true, but it's important what you said. That's not how the IRS is going to take you to jail. They're not going to call you up and say, guess what? Someone's coming to your door to arrest you. And I think knowing that is really very, very important. You know, a lot of what you're saying in terms of the government doesn't work that way. It sounds like it's much more paper oriented, mail oriented, and there's a tracing to it, a phone number, an account number, something that you can follow up with. So I think, you know, when you said that, you know, like, it's like an aha moment for people that, you know, when it comes to the government, they're not going to just call you and engage in private information.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna comment that I really like what you put on the chat as well in terms of resources, because it's difficult, I think, to predict what we're all gonna face in those phone calls. And I think it's good to have those numbers also handy so that people can just call and be like, I just had this, you know, it's like, well, you know, we might forget certain things that we talked about today also. And we're unsure in the heat of the moment. I think that the best tip to take away, best takeaway is just hang up. If it's a phone call, and if it's a text or an email, don't click.
That's a good point. And I did, and what the commissioner said, I did put ahead in the chat information on the fraud network helpline from AARP, websites for that, reaching out the New York State Attorney General helpline as well, so you can reach that. Leslie said, because, you know, I put up the information about these free shredding events that Schneps Media is doing and is sponsored by AARP. And Leslie wanted to know, why are shredding, what is so good about shredding?
Well, you're destroying the information, your personal identifiable information. Otherwise, what happens is that if you throw, you know, you just have like a piece of paper with you, all of the information that's there, the next person can just grab it. And unfortunately, that is, believe it or not, you know, scammers will go through garbage and find information that people have left just for grabs, like up for grabs. It's like, come get your free gift as a scammer. So you want to basically take away the possibility that they can read a document that will have your name or your address or your date of birth, your social security number, that type of information. They can put that together, you know, they could steal your identity.
That's a good point, because I know when I get those credit card forms in the mail to get a new credit card, I just kind of go rip, dump. And the reality is that's really not cutting it up enough. And when you shred it, it's literally impossible to put it back together. Lana said that she received an email about work from home jobs, and it said to click on a link in this email, and I'm hesitant to click on it. Maybe it's a scam. What would you say to Lana about clicking on email links?
Right, so you do want to be careful, like, why are you receiving, you know, these email? I mean, I don't know if you signed up for a particular list or your name again, right? Like our emails end up somewhere. I think if you're looking for work, I think there's other ways, you know, to find employment. So that's one piece that you can be outward looking in that sense, and not necessarily wait for those to come in. There's a lot of websites that do post, you know, if you have a LinkedIn account, right? I mean, you have companies that list through there. I know Indeed, right? They post jobs. The New York State Department of Labor has jobs that they post as well because of relationships with employers. So you could do it that way and not click on it. I think a scam is something that you can protect yourself from once you open it and you're concerned about what it may be asking from you. What you might want to also be more concerned about, instead of a scam, when you're clicking on a link that you don't know where it's coming from, is the possibility that there's a virus there and could impact your device. So that's something to be concerned about, and any exposure that may give in terms of information that you have in those devices. So I wouldn't click on it.
Enough said. You're a good leader.
I just think there's other ways that you can safely look for employment and not depend on an unsolicited email you received with possibilities.
Very good point. Carolyn said, for New York State Department of Labor unemployment pandemic pay recipients, emails are now being sent to us asking for copies of our past taxes, etc. Is that legitimate, and how would one find out if it was?
Well, the Department of Labor, they have, if you go to their website, I think it's labor.ny.gov. Considering that I worked there before, as you mentioned in my bio, Elizabeth, call and ask them. I don't really want to tell you whether it's legitimate or not because I don't know what they're asking for. I'm not privy to their processes, but you should just call them and ask them.
Mm-hmm. Really good point. So go ahead and ask them about it. And then also, again, you can use this AARP network helpline and let them know about the fraud. And they're there to help people to determine if things are legitimate or not. So again, it goes back, Commissioner, to what you said, ask questions, ask questions. We have another great question here from Claudia. She said she got a call and caller ID said it was Amazon. We haven't ordered anything recently, but we picked up the call. They said we ordered a $900 iPhone and directed us to choose 1 to authorize this, 3 if we didn't authorize this. Would it have been better to just not answer the call? And could this be a scam?
Oh, I think, again, I wouldn't press on any of those buttons. If you didn't order anything and, but you believe somebody stole your credit card and placed it on your behalf, you can just hang up and you can just check your credit cards for any unauthorized purchases. If you have an Amazon account, go log on into your own account and check for the order history. That's what you should do. It's okay, again, it's okay to answer phone calls. You just shouldn't provide information or agree to anything that it's just not something you were expecting.
Really good advice. I think the theme that runs through here is ask questions, don't blindly follow instructions, have the confidence to ask why, make a phone call and to the department, to the governmental department directly, or reach out to a legitimate helpline such as the AARP Fraud Watch Network helpline, where they can help you determine if something is legitimate or not, and slow it down. Like you said, slow it down. There's no need to be able to have to respond in such a very quick way. Thank you. This has been so helpful. I know, from the comments that we're getting, people are really finding this information useful. And I know education is so critical in this. So I wanted to also Wilson wanted everyone to know too, that if you suspect ID theft, you should also call your local Social Security office and state labor department to report your scam. So really make sure that you're reporting it, that you're investigating before you may answer or click or have your information gathered. If you've been a victim, speak out, get help, let people know, and use resources like these free shredding events all around the city. Again, you can go to schnepsmedia.com/events and click on the free shredding events. Go there, shred your documents so you don't have papers lying around that can get you into trouble. We also wanted to let everyone know that next Wednesday at this same time, we have another webinar called Protecting Veterans from Scammers. Sadly, many of our veterans are being scammed at very high rates. And so we want to do whatever we can to protect them. So I'm actually in the chat, and I will also in the email, I'm sending the registration link for that webinar so that we can all band together and protect our veterans. This is unacceptable. And protecting one another by following these really important things that we've learned from you, Commissioner, and Wilson. Thank you so much to both of you for providing this really critical information to keep everyone safe and be protected against governmental scams. So thank you, Commissioner, for your time. You are such an admirable woman, and so thrilled to be able to have you here. Wilson, thank you for shepherding this conversation, and AARP for sponsoring such an important conversation. Thank you to all of our attendees for spending some time with us and educating yourself. As I shared, this has been recorded. We will send you the link. Share it, share it, share it. We want to get this information out. That is our best protection, right, is knowledge and information. So let's keep educating ourselves and educating our communities. And I wish you all just to stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll certainly look forward to seeing you in our next webinar. Thank you so much, everyone.